All right, guys, we are on chapter 14. So, food safety regulation and standards. So, this is very important because we're talking about the regulating authorities, your FDA, your Department of Agriculture, all of those things. You're going to have here in Georgia, in Augusta, you have health inspectors. I've had health inspectors come to all of my restaurants, no matter hotels, country clubs, restaurants, they come. And they come usually once to twice a year. Usually you'll see about every 6 months, all depending. I know up in Atlanta it was about once a year. That you would see them, unless you didn't do well. If you didn't do well, they came in a lot more. And so it's really good to have to kind of self inspect yourself to see how your restaurant's doing. I know that I would try and do at least once a month, go through and check the kitchens and kind of just do it as if I was the health inspector, and what you're looking for, what needs to be fixed, and bring it to your staff's attention. It really is making sure that they know what's going on. Usually when the health inspector comes, they're going to come unannounced, and they're going to just come straight in. And they'll probably come at the worst day that you could want them to be there. So it doesn't matter. They're always going to come. And you're going to have to drop everything and stand there with them. Usually, all depends on how big your facility is. Sometimes it's an hour visit. Sometimes I've had 2.5 hour visits because we walk through everything, and I take them through every kitchen, and they look at everything. So it's good to know what to be expected, and this class tells you what you need to expect, what you need to have happen. You know, that your shelves need to be 6 inches off the ground, your table mounts need to be 4 inches off the table, you know, what the temperature danger zone is, your coolers need to be 41 degrees or lower, your hot boxes need to be 35 degrees or higher. I mean, all of these things fall into place with this. All right. So the food and your government agencies is your Food and Drug Administrative, your FDA. They inspect all food except for meat, poultry, and eggs, and they regulate the food transported. So there's the FDA food code. Not everybody has to use this. So it contains federal recommendations, and it's created more for your city, your county, your state, your tribal agencies that regulate restaurants, food stores, vending operations, schools and daycare centers, and hospitals. It's recommended but not required. So the food code is recommended but not required. U.S. Department of Agriculture regulates and inspects meat, poultry, and eggs. And we'll talk about that once we get into our stocks and sauces and methods of fab. When we start talking about poultry and eggs and all those different things and all your different meats. But yeah, you have your Center for Disease Control and Prevention. These are agencies of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. They assist the FDA and the USDA. So they're investigating for outbreaks, studying the causes and controls of diseases. They're publishing any statistics that happen with the data of morbidity and mortality. So a great example, if you know the CDC right now with the coronavirus, they're the ones who are keeping up with how many people are dying and the rates, and how many people have gotten infected in one day. They're keeping up with that. So that's the Center for Disease Control that is doing that. Public Health Service, that assists the FDA and the USDA. That's more of a city and state, local regulatory agency. They conduct research into the foodborne illness outbreaks, and they'll assist in the investigation. State and local regulatory authorities, they inspect operations, enforce regulations, and they're enforcing. When they're coming in and inspecting, that's where they're enforcing it. They're looking at the temperature of the dish machine. When you're on rinse, is it at 180 degrees for the sanitizer? They're looking at these things. Is that happening? Is that not? And if it's not, they're writing it down and they're dinging your points off. Sometimes people will fail just because of, equipment was not working the way it should be because they weren't checking it. So you got to be on top of these things. They investigate any kind of complaints or illnesses. People will go into restaurants and complain. I went to a restaurant, there was a restaurant that I frequented that I loved, but they had all these little flies. They were these little fruit, I thought they were fruit flies, but come to find out they weren't. And I would be eating and it was right there on the table, and I was like, they need to do some pest control. And I stopped going to the restaurant because it wasn't one, it wasn't two. I mean, it was like 5, 10 little ones. And I went, no, I'm not going to do this. So, they had complaints and they closed down. The regulatory authorities, they issue licenses, they approve construction. So again, if you're going to add on to your restaurant, you got to get it approved.